Should I have the hob on the kitchen island, or maybe the sink, or nothing at all? I feel like I have this conversation with every client who wants a kitchen island as part of their design. And with so many things kitchen design, there isn't a right or wrong answer. But in this video, I thought we'd talk about having a hob or cooktop on a kitchen island. Some of the reasons you might want to have a hob on a kitchen island, as well as the considerations you'll need to think about. So let's get into it. Real quick before we get into all of this, here in the UK we call these hobs. I think in North America and elsewhere you might call them cooktops, but just know when I say the word hob, I mean cooktop. Why would you want to have the hob on a kitchen island? I've got a few reasons and scenarios why you may want to, and when it might be the best idea for the layout and your room. First off, functionality. Having the hob on the kitchen island can help to create the perfect working triangle or kitchen zone. Now you may have come across these terms before, and I talk about them a little bit in another video which I'll link to. But basically it's all about optimizing the functionality of your kitchen. The working triangle is about tying together your sink, hob and fridge, having them all within an easy sort of pivot and step or two to one another, rather than having them all spread out at different ends of the kitchen. Having the hob in the kitchen island and say sort of opposite or near a sink is a great way to start to create that triangle. And this way it makes day-to-day use of the kitchen a little bit more optimized and functional. When you don't have base cabinets on an outside wall. Having base cabinets to install your hob into that are located on an outside wall means that vented extraction is much simpler to achieve. You can simply have a cooker hood above your hob and vent it straight out that outside wall and outside. However, if you can't fit your hob into those cabinets that are against an outside wall, or you don't have any base cabinets that are against an outside wall, maybe they're on an internal wall, then your cooker hood extraction options and routes are going to become a little bit more complicated, and as such it may make no difference where your hob is actually located, opening up that option to place it on a kitchen island. Create a cooking social hub. Having the hob on a kitchen island creates a fantastic social hub and a great cooking experience. If you have your hob on the island, you can look out into the room as you're cooking. It could be that you have seating on your kitchen island as well, and you can be stood there chatting to your guests while you're frying up a delicious meal. Or maybe you have an open plan kitchen, dining, living room layout, and you can be stood there cooking while keeping an eye on the kids while they're sat at the dining table or on the sofa. Being able to face the room while you're cooking is a much more social experience. Whereas if you have your hob on a run of cabinets against a wall, you're going to have your back to the room while you're cooking, when you don't have enough countertop space against the wall. So one of the most popular kitchen layout types that I come across is a straight run of cabinets against a wall with an island in front of it. You could also describe this as like an open galley kitchen. However, the mistake I see people making here is trying to fit everything on that run of cabinets against the wall because they really want to try and keep the island clear. Fitting a hob and a sink on the same run requires a good amount of space. Both will need to be set in from the ends of the run for safety or installation regulations. For instance, you shouldn't have a hob that's at the end right up against a tool cabinet, especially if it's gas, because this will be too close to a flammable material. And as well, the hob and the sink will need separation from each other, again for safety, but also to provide you with some usable countertop space for prep or putting small appliances out. So when you don't have enough space to put both the sink and the hob on that run, moving the hob to the kitchen island makes a lot of sense from a layout point of view. The alternative would be to put the sink on the island, but this comes with its own set of pros and cons, which I'll talk about in another video. So make sure you subscribe so you don't miss it. Aesthetics. Lastly, and by no means least, having your hob on the kitchen island can really help with the aesthetics and the design of your kitchen. A classic design principle, and one I get a little bit obsessed with, is the idea of symmetry. While perfect symmetry may not be achievable in every kitchen, paying attention to the overall balance of the kitchen is very important. So going back to my popular layout of a single run of cabinets with the island in front of it example, having the hob on the kitchen island separate to the sink on the single run means that there's only one appliance on each countertop. This means that, for instance, you could center the sink on that run of cabinets against the wall and build out the design from the middle, making it perfectly symmetrical. Similarly, with the hob on the island, you could center that in the island and build the island around it to make it symmetrical or balanced. Having the sink and hob on the same run or island can make the design feel cluttered and unbalanced. You'll often lose that focal point and wow factor of the kitchen if it's too cluttered. Things to consider when having the hob on a kitchen island. So now that we've gone over some of the reasons why you might want to put your hob on a kitchen island, there are some considerations and practical things to think about. Cooker hoods and extraction. Probably the biggest consideration or obstacle to overcome is what type of cooker hood and extraction you're going to have. Now there are 4 main types when it comes to island cooker hoods. Island chimney cooker hoods, ceiling cooker hoods, downdraft extractors, and venting hobs, or hobs with built-in extractors. Each has its pros and cons and installation challenges that you'll need to understand and think about. I've done a whole video about all of these and going into detail about it, so if you want to know more about these, I'll leave a link up here. Power or gas supply. So if you're having a hob on a kitchen island, it will need to have power or gas supplied to it. This means getting the necessary supply in place early on in the renovation process, as it will likely mean chopping up the floor to lay that supply to the kitchen island. Regardless of what type of supply you need for your hob, I think it's always a good idea to get power to the island anyway. You may need power for other large appliances such as a wine cooler or a dishwasher. And as well as this, I always recommend to get some power points installed on your island so you've got somewhere to plug in and charge your phone, or plug in small appliances so you can work on the kitchen island. Sufficient space around the hob. You don't want a small kitchen island that can barely fit that hob onto it. You'll want space on either side for pot handles to face out, as well as enough countertop space so things don't drop straight off or your pasta sauce doesn't spit straight out and onto the floor. It's also nice to have that space to put pans down or move them across so you're not moving about the kitchen just trying to put a pan down somewhere. Not leaving sufficient space either side of your hob can also be dangerous, especially with gas hobs, as you might not have enough clearance between where the flame is and people walking by, or where the flame is and a flammable material. You also want to consider having enough space at the back of the hob as well. Again, so there's room for pans to move around a little bit and that your splashes and cookings don't just drop straight onto the floor. It's also important to have some extra space behind the hob if you're going to have seating at the island. You don't want your guests to be sitting on top of the hob and not have any space to put a plate or cup while they're sitting there. And from a safety point of view, you don't want anyone, and especially kids, too close to those hot pans while you're cooking. How big should a kitchen island be with a hob? As with everything seemingly in life, it depends. Ideally, I like an island that's at least 1.8 meters wide. This will allow for a 60 centimeter hob and a 60 centimeter cabinet on either side, which gives us that sufficient space. So 3 600mm cabinets making up that 1.8 meters. Nice and symmetrical. I mean, this could be less, around 1.2 meters, and have, say, 2 300mm cabinets either side of that 600mm cabinet in the middle with the hob, but I really wouldn't go any less than this. And of course, it could be much larger. You could have a bigger 5-zone hob and more cabinets on either side, or however you build your island. I'd also recommend that the island is deeper than a standard depth 600mm cabinet. Ideally, at least 900mm deep. This gives enough space behind the hob, as we just talked about, for any splashes or some separation from people sitting at the island. So are you team hob, sink, or nothing at all on your kitchen island? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.